Now, Rita and James, she's the monarch. She's still going strong. She's 94 years old. And she made an intervention, if you like, recently on the coronavirus, one of the very few times she's actually spoken to the nation outside of a war or outside of her Christmas address. Rita Panahi, let's kick off with you. Your first thoughts on the Queen, Her Majesty Elizabeth II.
Well, she's universally admired. I think even staunch Republicans would have to admit that she has absolutely conducted herself beautifully throughout her reign, and her work ethic, everything she represents, I think, is something to be admired. I do fear for the future of the monarchy when Prince Charles becomes king, because I think he is everything that the Queen is not. I don't think he's going to be able to stay away from these contentious issues, to understand his role and not to preach about climate change or whatever else, you know, Israel and other issues that he's spoken about in the past. So for the sake of the monarchy and for the sake of our constitution, unless we want to become a republic, I do hope the Queen holds on, and perhaps Prince William takes over it and Charles just goes off with Camilla and has some quiet time.
Wishful thinking, but I'd be very surprised if that happened, unfortunately. James, the Queen, Rita mentioned, you know, how important and impressive she has been, and people of all political hues look to her. She's had, you know, any number of prime ministers of the left, of the right. She's managed to get on with all of them, mostly, although there were rumours she and Margaret Thatcher didn't exactly see eye to eye. How has she managed to be such a critical political figure, James, in the world, at the same time as being apolitical?
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? That she's apolitical, and she is probably the last public figure who manages to do what everybody else wishes we could do, which is rise above politics. You know, her life has been the most extraordinary biography of the modern world. You know, she was a mechanic in World War II. She knows about service. She knows about sacrifice. She bought her wedding dress in 1947 with ration coupons. There's always been a sense with the Queen that she is very much of the people that she's leading, but that she doesn't at all sully herself in any of the political fights, even though all of these prime ministers have been in and out and in and out, and she has formed so many governments and presided over so many governments. That ability to stay above the fray is just, I think that is what we admire about her, isn't it? I mean, everything else gets mired down in politics. We were talking about Prince Charles and him getting sucked into politics on, you know, environment or this or that or the other thing. You know, I mean, there are roles for a monarch to play. There are roles for royals to play, and they are, you know, generally quiet. We don't think about them, but they are helping to you know, help people with problems, open things, and generally just sort of be there as kind of shadow advocates for people and causes, but they're not to be political. And I think that the move from the Queen to her son, and then, you know, what comes after that, you know, all of that idea that there's this division is going to fall away. And that's deeply worrying for the British Constitution, and I think probably eventually for Australian constitutional arrangements as well.
Well, James, you say that it's the role of the monarch to be quiet and not seen and all the rest of it, but Queen Elizabeth is the 40th monarch since William the Conqueror. I don't think William the Conqueror was particularly quiet and held back on his points of view. So what we have is a monarchy, Rita, that has evolved in history. So I guess the question is, how much of the historical part of the monarchy gives her power and her presence and her prestige, and how much of it is the new role of the monarchy, as opposed to the historical one that James has just outlined, this kind of apolitical figure, which really has only been around this century at best.